demo environment that we put together, including a few athletic brands. Right here, I can see I'm looking at the month of June. Like I said earlier, if I wanted to do a comparison, I'd be able to kind of select month over month and split the data in that way. So here we can see for this month of June, the rankings in my competitive set. I can see the overall media impact value that was earned by the brand across which number of placements, and then where appropriate, the evolution. So this means we're looking at June. This is going to compare the sort of percentage of change from the previous month, which would have been April or May, sorry. So I can see here my rankings, right? And we'll get into a lot more detail of what's driving these rankings and all of that. Next to that, I've got a share of value. So I can look both by media impact value, but also just by sheer placements alone, who is really owning that share of value. So I can see here, no surprise, Nike is sort of taking the large amount of the cake here, but I can see the split across all of these brands. And again, by the number of placements and by the value associated. Moving down, I can see an evolution chart, if you will. So this is going to let me sort of track peaks and valleys in terms of value being driven across all voices and all channels for each brand. So if I'm curious to know what was really driving this spike for Adidas on this day, I can click in and see the top 30 placements that really drove the highest value. I can see which voice type they were driven by, across which channel, the potential reach, engagement rates, again, where appropriate, and the media impact value associated. So you can see here, I've got a mix of voice types, some partners. So it looks like they did a collaboration with Gucci. So we can see the mention of Nike on Gucci's channels, how that sort of drove value for the brand. So moving on, I can scroll further and get a bit more information around the split. So curious to know where this value is being driven from. And it's interesting, and I think back to an earlier point that Alex made, this is where we can get that extra level of intel on a competitor's strategy, right? So looking here at a brand like Gymshark, the majority of their value, about 69%, is being driven by the voice of influencers. So I want to click through and see which influencers are they working with and what's really driving the value and what kind of content and all that good stuff. So I can see here, a few of these are paid advertisements or sponsored with some influencers, while a few of them seem to be a bit more organic. So I can click through and again, pop out and view this content live on the social channels. And the same for any other voice here, right? So if I'm curious to know, partners is really strong for Under Armour. Curious to know what that looks like. Looks like Under Armour has some channels in the Asian market. So this is a good plug for the Asian social channels that we track. So Douyin, WeChat, Weibo, things like this, which are ever growing with these types of brands, of course. Okay, so bringing it along further, the same idea, but looking at print, online, and social, right? So understanding where the value is coming from, across which channel are we seeing the most, the most value being driven. Social, not surprisingly, we saw influencers really heavy here. So social, is their strongest. Whereas, a brand like Puma, really strong across online channels. So I can click through there and see which channels, which websites are really driving value for Puma. Okay, so then the last chart in this view is the brand efficiency benchmark, which is very interesting, and I think one that is becoming more and more popular with our partners that use this platform, because it kind of gives you a sense of quantity versus quality. So there's no right or wrong place to be in this chart, but what it is going to tell me is, are these brands working with a large number of placements with a lower average media impact value, or is it a small number of placements with a much larger average media impact value? So what you can really interpret here is, especially if we were to drill down to the influencer voice, maybe we should do that. For example, what I can see here is Are they working with a large amount of influencers who have a generally lower, media impact value per placement? Or is it a small number of influencers with a really high media impact value per placement? So hopefully that was explained clearly enough, but really I think the key takeaway here is understanding quantity versus quality. So moving on, I want to show you guys a few different views in the platform and the ways in which we can kind of dig a little deeper and splice the data. So the next thing I'll do is move this little, the Zoom bar. What I'm going to do is come into the brand focus. So as we were looking at the benchmark page, which allows me to drill into any of these voices and see those similar charts. What I'm going to do now is come into a brand focus, which is going to take a look at an individual brand. So in this case, we're looking at Nike and Nike alone. I can drill down to any of these competitors I have listed here, but for today's example, we'll take a look at Nike and we'll look at all voices for the moment. So here in the month of June, I can see that Nike earned 202 million in media impact value across around 85,000 placements with an average MIV per placement of about 2.3K. So similar to the earlier view, I can see Nike Alone's sort of evolution throughout the month, understanding where we saw some spikes, where we saw some valleys, and what voices and how much value those individuals were contributing to that day. Coming down here is going to be sort of a heat map of where this value is coming from. So we can see heavy in mainland China, which probably isn't too much of a surprise, along with really strong media impact value being driven by the United States. But I can see here in some other smaller colors, lighter colors in smaller countries, the same sort of value being driven in each one. And of course, I'm able to click through and view those individual placements for each country. So moving down a bit, I can see the data in a few different ways. The voice mix. So again, for Nike alone during this month, what was the voice mix? Where was the value being driven most from? So here in this case, I can see is from media placements. So again, being able to click through and clicking on this Vogue article will take me directly to that article so I can kind of dig in a little deeper. I can also toggle that by placements as well. So if I just wanted to see the sheer number of placements versus the value driven from those placements, I can do that. Here's the evolution by mix, so a little further breakdown. So here we have the placements along with the total media impact value, and then that evolution, that percentage of change up or down from the previous time period. Digging further, I see the channel mix by media impact value. So this is interesting to get the detailed view. So while here I have online, print, and social, what I'm able to do is toggle to get a little deeper, and I can see the exact channels. So for example, if I'm curious to know Weibo, one of the popular Asian social channels, how much value is being driven, what are the individual voices, I can come in here and see, okay, these are a few media presences on Weibo. Here's one influencer, I can see the different voice types, and again, click out and see that actual content live in the channel. Okay, so here I've got key voices. So again, looking at the month of June, what are the key voices for my brand? In this case, Nike. Who are our strongest voices? What type of voice are they? What was the channel that they posted on? I can see the individual kind of content. So in this case, I see a lot of media, some owned media that performed well for them. And then down here, I can get to the individual placements themselves. So here I have a stronger mix of influencer and celebrity, but these are the individual placements as opposed to the voices as a whole above. What's really interesting and kind of the way I'm gonna toggle to the next screen I wanna share is our ability to click through to see this media voices profile. So when I do that, it's going to bring me to a voice focus. So our next tab, to give me some information about, in this case, Hypebeast, which obviously, if you guys aren't aware, is a kind of strong media outlet in the United States. So at the top of this voice profile page, I can see some average numbers for Hypebeast. So on average, across Instagram, they're generally, generating this amount in media impact value with this potential reach and an average engagement rate, right? So I can see that for all of the available channels. But if I scroll down a bit, I can see how this voice of Hypebeast US has performed for all of these competitors. And this is where it gets very interesting. And in another view, I can also see the percentage of this that was paid versus editorial or earned. But in this case, I can see, okay, they have one placement for Under Armour, earning them 10K, whereas for Nike, they've mentioned them in this month alone 405 times, earning them about 6.8 million in media impact value. I can click through and see those exact posts and understand what channel were they posted on and what type of content was it, right? The same goes for any of these, right? So I can click through and see for Puma, they've got 4 with around 45K, and then 86 for New Balance with 1.3 million. So I think this chart in particular really can speak to different teams in a lot of different ways, right? So if you're, an editorial team or a media buying team and you guys are spending money with some of these, we want to know editorially how much are they featuring us, right? And really evaluate that partnership. So then below, we've got the split between the placements of online, print, or social. If I'm correct in this, I don't think Hypebeast has a print publication. So in this case, it's only going to be online or social. But if they did, we would see that split there as well. So that's the voice focus. The other voice I want to show you all, not celebrities, is going to be this influencer voice. So as we've been mentioning, we have the ability to sort of solely look at the voice of these influencers, as we call them, to understand how they're performing for my brand, and of course, how they're performing for competitors as well. So I think this one had some good data in it, but I could be wrong. So what's really interesting is being able to see when these influencers are clearly working with other brands. So in this case, we have this influencer strong on the Asian social networks. I think it's Weibo, sorry. And he or she is obviously working or mentioning these brands quite frequently. So we can see how this individual is performing for these brands, right? Clearly, they have some sort of partnership with Nike, or they're just big fans. Curious to know a bit more. So what I can do is click through and see those posts, right? So these are all of the posts on Weibo that this individual influencer has mentioned the brand Nike. And the same goes for New Balance and Fila, etc. So back to Alex's point about digging deeper into a brand strategy and being able to truly benchmark. This is another great example of, number one, reporting retroactively on how influencers have performed for your brand, but also discovering new influencers. I can come in here and see, oh, wow, Adidas has some strong, influencer voices. Let's come in here and see, who they are, who they're working with. Maybe that's a brand that or a voice that I should look to activate, right? So I can come down here and see those actual individual placements, click out and see the placement on Weibo Live, like I've been mentioning, and dig in a little deeper about the association. So the last thing I want to share, unless Alex, you have anything else, or anyone on the call has anything they want to dig into a little deeper, I'm going to pull it back out to a sort of a wider frame here and speak a bit about this industry benchmarking as a whole. So what we've done is, seeing as we're tracking this data on all of these brands that fit into their niche industries, in this case, we're looking at mass market athletic brands. I want to know, my competitive set, but also sort of the industry as a whole, right? Where's my brand fitting in the grand scheme of things? So you can see here, this particular industry view is comprised of 171 brands, and here they are listed out. So I can get an understanding of, in the sort of grand scheme ecosystem of these athletic brands, where are my competitors along with myself really sitting. So this allows me to see, similarly, to that earlier benchmarking view, the year-over-year placements, the year-over-year media impact value. And of course, for those brands that are in my actual tenant, as we call it, I can click through and see more detail around them. So in this case, going back to that brand focus, this time we're looking at New Balance, but we can see the same series of charts. So it's repetitive in the best way so that it's very user-friendly. You can understand. All of these charts are able to be downloaded as an image or Excel. So really helpful in terms of compiling your own reports and pulling this data and extracting. The last thing I'll mention about sort of launch metrics as a whole and how we partner with clients in regard to insights. While the information in here is very insightful, and not to be repetitive, but it does, require a bit of analysis. And that's where our services team, particularly our data services team, really helps our brand partners analyze this. So whether it be quarterly reports or booking sessions with these data scientists, these are individuals who are poring over this data day after day. So really have a sort of the next level of intelligence in terms of how these numbers are being driven and from what activations. So they work with our brand partners to sort of interpret this data. So if anyone has any questions or requests for more information, please don't hesitate to ask Alex and I now, or follow up with us. But otherwise, while that was brief, hopefully that gave you a good kind of general feel for what this tool can provide you as a brand. So that's all I'll have to share for the moment. Alex, I'm not sure if we will open it up to questions, or if there's anything else you think I should touch on, let me know, please.
Yeah, we only have 1 minute, so I want to be mindful of the time, but someone did ask, are the competitors set in the platform, or can I choose my own brands? I mean, who I consider a competitor?
Yeah, great question. So we'd always be open to recommending if you need help building out a competitive list, but these lists are dictated by you, the brand. You know your competitors better than we do. So you would be able to let us know, and we would build out this environment for you.
Great. And then another question is, how far can I go back in terms of comparing results? You're showing June. Will I have data from before I joined the platform?
Yeah, indeed. We can, depending on the brand and the time frame, we can certainly backfill data. I believe we have a standard 3 month for a brand signing on, but in many instances we can go custom, and we've been tracking these brands and your brands for a very long time, and we have plenty of back data to provide you.
Okay, great. And one last question was, you showed top 30 mentions. How can I see all my mentions?
Yeah, great question. So the purpose of this tool, I'll keep it brief, my answer. The purpose of this tool is for true benchmarking. And in order to truly benchmark, we need a controlled environment, right? So Insights is based on a kind of controlled panel of voices, right? The most key voices that we found amongst our client base. But obviously there's a need to get your extensive coverage. So Launch Metrics provides another platform, which we have another dedicated session recorded if anyone's interested. But the other platform called Discover is our exhaustive media monitoring tool. So this is going to be any mention across online, print, and social of your brand. So while this is more focused on competitive benchmarking, Discover is going to be your exhaustive coverage that you can report on.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Val. So sorry, we are 2 minutes over time. Hopefully you're still with us, but thank you so much for joining. As Val mentioned, if you have any other questions, please feel free to email us. We'll share the recording, so you can always go back to it. And then we do have some upcoming sessions, so keep an eye out for some other ones. We have one on China KOL analytics, so that sounds interesting. We'll be sharing some more information later. But in the meantime, have a great week, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you so much, Will.
Alex.
Bye everyone.